Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another Makeup and Movie Monday. I hope you're doing very well. So today I'm here to carry on from last week. So if you didn't catch my last week Makeup and Movie Monday, I spoke about Star Wars episodes 1 to 3. So this week I'm going to be doing 4 to 6 essentially. So obviously that means hopefully next week I'll be doing 7, 8 and 9, and then probably the week after I'll be doing like the solo movies. So today I wanted to essentially just concentrate on 4, 5 and 6. I know last week I was kind of mentioning that I didn't want to go into too much detail because these movies have been out for a really long time, and the whole point of me doing essentially movies like this is just to kind of talk about movies that I love and just put on makeup at the same time. So yeah, as per usual, I will be putting on a full face of makeup, but I won't be talking about the makeup. So if you ever intrigued by anything that I'm using, I always write down the brand in the description so you can have a look. So let's get on with it. I have my notes this side as per usual because I know Star Wars, but I will always mess up because I get quite nervous when I talk about things I love and I don't want to mess it up. So let's start off with episode number 4, which I guess people in the day used to call it just like Star Wars because they never really knew it was going to be more of a series. So this is essentially like A New Hope, but when it came out it was just called Star Wars. So this came out in 1977 and it was directed by George Lucas, who actually created the whole series as well. So weird fact, a lot of people kind of feel that he directed like all of them. He directed 1 to 4, but then after that he just kind of was involved with being like a producer and stuff like that, I believe, and obviously he created the whole kind of genre. So yeah, he directed the first one, and in this you get to essentially meet all your main characters. So you get to meet like Darth Vader. Like, it's really strange, you get to meet the villain essentially so early in the movie, because most movies, you know, you would get to meet like some of the main characters and then you meet the villain, but pretty much straight away you meet Darth Vader. And honestly, when I was young watching him like turn up, I was like, this is really freaky. Like, who the hell is this guy? Why the hell is he dressed like a robot? Because essentially we just kind of see him like, you know, have a essentially, yeah, it's just a male voice, so it's not a very robotic voice. So yeah, you get to meet Darth Vader, which is probably one of the scariest villains in cinema history. Then you get to meet Princess Leia, who is the Queen of Queens essentially. You know, she is pretty much the strongest, one of the strongest female characters in science fiction. Of course, her and like, you know, Ripley from Alien, they just like to kick ass basically. And then you kind of get to meet a lot of the smaller characters like R2 and 3PO just in the beginning. And then later on you do get to meet our main kind of I guess they call them sorry, my voice, I can't even pronounce the word, but you get to meet essentially the main character, which is Luke. So Luke Skywalker is essentially living with his aunt and uncle, and he really wants to be like a starfighter pilot. And they're just kind of like, no, you're really young, and maybe next year you can like do it instead, but this year we want you to like run our farm because, you know, we're quite, I guess they're, yeah, quite poor and just living in like this desert. So I'm not going to go into like the whole detail of the movie because if you've seen them, you know what they're about. But then you get to kind of, as you kind of go along, you know, a lot of shit happens, and then you get to meet Obi-Wan, which is played by Alec Guinness, who is freaking amazing. It's quite a funny thing where I think he didn't really like the script because I think he was just like, I don't understand it. And it's just like, yeah, it's science fiction, and you know, I think he kind of didn't know what he was signing up for. So I think, yeah, what had happened was when he signed the contract, in the contract he was like, yeah, I want to get the rights to some of this movie as well. So I think even like during the whole process he would get a small percentage of Star Wars, which is pretty freaking crazy, but pretty good on him. Obviously that probably would not happen anymore, because they were just like, okay, because I think everyone was just like, oh, we didn't realize how big the movie was going to be. And honestly, when it came out, it was freaking huge, obviously compared to what it is now. But Star Wars was just something quite new to a lot of people, especially when it came to like science fiction. And then you kind of get these amazing effects and you get these amazing characters and twists and turns that I will talk about later, and you know, just stuff like that building into like an amazing franchise. But of course he was like, Alec Guinness was quite a well-known actor, like especially a British actor. He was in yeah, he was in a lot of movies, and then he just basically played a really old Jedi, and obviously he was just like, what is this shit? Why am I in this movie? But I guess like, you know, infamously when Sean Connery was like, he was offered the role for Gandalf, he was like, what is this? I don't understand. So obviously a lot of, you know, back in the day, a lot of people were not really in, like the older generations, like into science fiction, because he's like a Shakespearean kind of trained actor, and he's just like, what is Darth Vader and what is this kind of force shit? But anyway, you get to meet a lot of the main characters, and of course you get to meet Han and Chewie, who are by far the best duo in like science fiction. Like, fight me if you don't think that's true, but like they are essentially the best of friends, and they just work so well together. So I guess in like a New Hope, it's kind of the baseline obviously for like all these characters that you will see throughout the next 2 other movies. But of course the movie itself was a massive hit. But then I remember, well, Harrison Ford is known to be quite a miserable git, so I know, well, this for sure, but even he said it, like he didn't want to go past the first movie, because he was just like, okay, I signed up because I thought they were going to kill me off. But of course, because he became such a big character, they kept him on. And of course he's in the next 4 movies, because obviously he's in what's it called, Force Awakens and stuff like that. But obviously they became such iconic characters, even just like in the first film. And it's the same with like Darth Vader and Palpatine, and well, not Palpatine, but the Emperor Palpatine is gone. But yeah, with this movie, I remember watching it and just kind of just being a bit like, okay, these effects are fantastic. And this was way before like CGI, like how you have CGI now. Like everything was done on these sets, which were like this big, but it could look like a whole planet. It could look like anything essentially. And I remember reading that they did win an Oscar for like special effects, which is freaking amazing, because that movie is is amazing, especially for something like in the 70s. And George Lucas, this being his 2nd movie, I believe. Yeah, he did is it American Graffiti beforehand. But obviously when it came to a movie like this and getting big stars like Alec Guinness and Harrison Ford, I believe, was kind of getting bigger. Like he'd been in quite a few movies beforehand, but he this was like, I guess this was probably a role that a lot of people kind of recognise him for, because of the way he plays the character, the way he plays Han, and the way how like cocky and so like charming he can be. So yeah, essentially, you know, this is kind of a lead up to what I feel like the story kind of picks up in Empire. So Empire Strikes Back is the next movie that I'm kind of going to be diddly-dallying talking about. So that came out in 1980. So essentially we had like 3 years between each movie, and I feel that's a really good time, because the movies that came out quite recently, there was a Star Wars movie every year. And of course back in the day, I was like, yes, I absolutely am obsessed with having all this Star Wars. But after a while, it gets a little bit boring, a bit repetitive. But when obviously you had the 3-year separation, you had time to kind of reel in the movie that you had just seen. So essentially when New Hope came out, and then 3 years later we had Empire Strikes Back, which a lot of people feel is a more superior, like it's more the fan favorite. I recently saw online, I don't know who in their right mind would think this. I know it's about personal opinions, but people do their polls of like the favorite Star Wars movies, and a lot of people were choosing Rise of Skywalker over Empire Strikes Back, and I'm a bit are you okay? Like, I'd honestly I was just getting a bit confused, and I was like, have we been watching the same movie? Like, for me, like, you know, everyone who kind of knows me knows that Return of the Jedi is my favorite, but when it comes to kind of story, articulation, how well the movie flows, like Empire Strikes Back is 100% a more superior film, and it's just so much happens in that film that you kind of are taken aback so much. So yeah, that was kind of something I found a bit weird. But yeah, when Empire came out, you got to meet so many more kind of characters. Like, you got to meet Boba Fett, you got to meet Lando. So Lando Calrissian is like the coolest dude in all of space, essentially. I'm just gonna do my eyebrows because I can't talk and do them, so I'll just be right back. Okay, sorry. So as I was saying, you get to meet these amazing characters like Boba Fett. I mean, he only has essentially like 1 or 2 lines in this movie, but the fact that his presence makes such an impact. Lando, I absolutely love. I think he's obviously he kind of betrays them, but he is like, I had no choice, I had to do it, and blah blah blah. But one thing I do like, which I should have mentioned it before, but when the movie starts off, they're on Hoth, and I think it just looks amazing. Obviously they're on this ice planet trying to hide from the Empire, and just the way it looks. And you've got like the little tauntauns as well that are like little horses. Essentially they kind of look like seahorses as horses, I don't know, but yeah, I just love the way that tauntauns look. But yeah, in this movie it just takes so much more. You get more of a relationship between Han and Leia, because obviously they're just flirting with each other non-stop. But I feel like, because in this they have their first kiss as well, because in the beginning, this is before Luke realizes him and Leia's relationship, they were kind of a bit flirty and guess making Han jealous, which as you know now is quite cringeworthy when you look at it, but obviously we didn't know and you know, just her and Han's relationship, which kind of is a love and hate relationship, but I feel that they kind of work quite well as a couple, in the sense of, you know, opposites attract, and she's like a princess who is, you know, quite privileged, and you get Han, who is like a scoundrel who is, you know, just trying to make a living and just doing whatever he can just to make some money. But then one thing I like about these kind of movies is that Luke doesn't really have a partner. I know that's really sad to say that, oh, he doesn't have a partner, that's fine, but as in, it's not constantly relating to like relationships. And I feel what I like about sci-fi movies is that a lot of the time they're not concentrating on the whole love aspect. It's just basically, here's the story, here's the characters, we're just getting on with it. Because Han and Leia, they have their kind of relationship, they do it a lot off camera essentially. So you see that they have like their kiss and they're flirting, and Luke's like, oh okay, I liked her, but thankfully that didn't go anywhere apart from a kiss. And then one of the most kind of iconic scenes that you have in Empire is when Han is kind of putting carbonite, which is one of the saddest moments. Every time I watch it, I still get really emotional. That scene where Chewie is like crying out to try and save him, and they're all just like standing there, and Han's like, look, but you're not doing me any good. It's going to happen regardless, so let's just let it happen. And when he is going into the carbonite and Chewie's just like crying, I'm like, no. It's like one of the saddest moments. Of course there's the I love you, I know moment, which is absolutely gorgeous. I love that scene. But then one thing that always takes me out of the scene is when 3PO is like shouting in the background going, turn around, I can't see. That pisses me off so much, because you're kind of, for me, I get taken out of the scene slightly because he's so freaking annoying. I probably don't know if I've ever mentioned this, but 3PO, I'm not the biggest fan of his character. I mean, he obviously has his, you know, he's there for a reason. But him as a character, oh my god, he just really pisses me off. And I mean, R2 has always just been one of my favourites because he kind of, obviously he doesn't really talk, but he had bleeps and stuff, and which is fine. Obviously he can't talk, but 3PO is just one of the most annoying cyborgs around, and I think a lot of people do agree with me on that. He's kind of like, he's not Jar Jar bad, but he's still just a little bit, oh, can you just shut up? Even like in the modern ones now, he's still pretty annoying. Like, he's still just there because he's been in all the movies. So yeah, essentially Empire kind of ends with Han in carbonite, and Leia has been captured and kind of given to Jabba the Hutt. So when you get to Return of the Jedi, which is my favourite, I've probably mentioned it so many times, but Return of the Jedi is my favourite. That came out in 1983, so again we had a nice kind of, you know, separation from what we had seen. And what I forgot to mention in Empire as well is that we find out that Luke is, you know, the son of Darth Vader. I don't know how I completely just missed that bit, because Luke is essentially separated from everyone, and then we just kind of yeah, there's kind of a big separation where they all kind of just separate. That makes sense, because, you know, Luke is going to find Darth Vader and try and defeat him essentially, and that's when Vader's like, surprise, I'm your dad. And obviously that was a big shock, because we just think that he's just like this normal, not normal, but as in like he's just a normal bad guy who is there to just defeat the galaxy with the Emperor. But yeah, he is the daddy, and obviously the daddy of Leia as well. I think, no, Luke doesn't really find out that Leia's his sister until Return of the Jedi. So yeah, that's kind of right at the end, and he kind of keeps it to himself because he obviously doesn't want to freak out his friends and put them in jeopardy as well. So yeah, like I said, we get into Return of the Jedi, and that's when one of the best opening scenes is when they're going to rescue Han in Jabba's palace, because you kind of get, this is when every like geek's dream is like Leia in that kind of slave suit, and yeah, she looks absolutely gorgeous, but it's obviously meant to be quite a demeaning kind of suit, but Carrie Fisher still looks absolutely amazing in it. But yeah, that whole rescue in Jabba's palace is fantastic. And then of course we get to meet Ewoks, because I'm an Ewok fan, in case you couldn't tell. They're just one of my favourite kind of characters, and the people, obviously a lot of people hate Ewoks because they're just little teddy bears, but to be honest, they are quite fun. Like when when Leia meets Wicket for the first time, I honestly think it's one of the funniest scenes in like cinema history, because he's just this little bear, like I said, but he just wants food, because she's just kind of like, oh okay, hello, I'm stranded on this planet, and you just want food, that's cool. So of course they all come friends with the Ewoks, and they kind of help them out to defeat the Empire, which, you know, I like to stand by, because people say Ewoks are pretty pointless. They're not. They saved the Empire. And it's the same with, I guess, the Gungans as well, because as much as I hate Jar Jar Binks, which I forgot to mention in last week's video, so I apologise, they did manage to help people like get to safety, and they managed to help a lot of people survive. So, you know, say what you want, but you know, some of these annoying pointless characters have their moments. So yeah, you kind of get to meet, who else do you meet in Return of the Jedi? I don't really think you meet a lot of new characters, no, apart from like Yoda dying, which is pretty sad, because we know that, you know, Yoda in Empire was there to help Luke like train him become a Jedi, because beforehand we hadn't met Yoda, and we didn't really know who he was. We just knew he was really old and he was hiding in these little Jedi, and he was like 900 years old. So in Empire, of course, you know that he trains Luke and, you know, shows him, I guess, does he show him the way of the Force? He just like trains him to be a Jedi. And then before his training is kind of completed, he goes back to Dagobah to see him, but he dies because he's just like, yeah, my time is done. My time on, like, you know, this, not Earth, but this whatever is done, because he just is old and wants to rest, because obviously he fought the Clone Wars and he just went through so much shit and knows about Darth Vader and all that stuff. So yeah, you know, when he dies, it's definitely a really sad scene, because in the previous, in like Empire, you just know how much he meant to Luke, because he just understands what he went through and understands how he feels. I'm just gonna put on my lips and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, sorry. So as I was kind of mentioning, you know, with the Ewoks trying to, because on Endor, that's where they have the kind of security base for the Death Star and everything. And then you kind of have Luke and Darth fighting because the Emperor wants Luke to become, you know, Darth's apprentice. And Luke's like, nah, I'm not having it. I don't want to do it. And I can see that my father has good in him. So he was essentially trying to beat the bad out of him, because that lightsaber scene is pretty freaking amazing. Obviously the scenes that they have in Empire are pretty amazing, but when it comes to the fight that they have in Jedi, it's when Luke is trying to get through to his dad and just kind of like, look, I know there's good in you, I know you can do it. So Darth essentially does turn to the good side and throws Palpatine down a shaft. How he survives that, fuck knows, but we're not really gonna get into that just yet. That's gonna be next week. Oh my god, I'm dreading it already. But yeah, that is kind of 4, 5 and 6 in a nutshell, to as much as I can kind of bring it forward. Obviously if you're watching this, you probably know a lot about Star Wars anyway, and I've just given you a gist of it and how I feel towards them, because they really do mean a lot to me. I know that sounds really tacky, like these movies are so kind of blown out and over the top, but they are just amazing movies. They're my childhood. I know a lot of my friends agree with me as well, as much as, you know, the Star Wars world has been milked to death, but those movies are still really special. If you can have a chance to watch the originals and not the George Lucas edits, because those just really piss me off. The originals don't exist anymore, which is pretty frustrating. So if you watch any version, it's going to be like the new kind of George Lucas edits, which are pretty annoying because the graphics in them are pretty shit. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. This is my finished look. Let me know what you think. I thought I'd go for a green look today, because why the hell not? But yeah, please don't forget to like and subscribe, because I film and upload every time I get a chance to. And next week I will be doing 7, 8 and 9. And I'm not going to be happy doing it, because I'm not a big fan of the last 2. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're healthy and you're safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.